technical issues, and every other time the gimbal works or not. So this time it doesn't, but we are here. Can you guys hear me? Okay, why? Do you guys hear it playing back? Let's see. Okay, because it's playing delayed me back into my ears. So, um, always something, isn't it? So anyway, I am glad you guys are here today to celebrate my birthday bestie, Eugène Delacroix, and we're here at the Quai Voltaire. And this building, this is not the building that he lived at, but this is, we are right here at the at 15 Quai Voltaire, and this is a bit where the building was that he lived, and he moved in here in January 1829, at the end of January. I wish it was this building, and I wish I lived in that building. But the building that is here, was built after he died. So this building was done in 1894. But isn't it gorgeous? Look at all the way up there. And then the building next to it, I've written about a couple times, which I'll share with you. And why does the screen keep going dark? Anyway, so hopefully, if this doesn't if something happens and it goes dark and you can't see it, Chrissy or Angela, send me a message. Angela, you have my WhatsApp. So in case something goes weird, because it keeps going dark on me. Great. Thank you, Jean. So this building is where, so we're going to do this kind of the walk. It's not going to be chronological in the life of Delacroix, but it's going to be, it's more, this is the flow of how we go. And so he lived on the left bank, but we should back up a little because and I, of course, I have to get where it's the noisiest. He was born on April 26th, 1798, 225 years ago this Wednesday. And he was born in Chanton-Saint-Maurice, it's just right on the edge of Paris, literally on the edge of Paris. And when his parents got divorced, or his father died, his father died, and his mom um, ended up moving here to Paris to live after they had gone down to Bordeaux. And so when he moved here to this location, he was here in 1829, and he stayed here for a few years. This is where he had his atelier. And this is where, I'm going to try to run across the street now if our cars are coming. This is where he painted Liberty Leading the People. And look at how close we are. We're just right across the water from the Louvre. So he was so close to just looking over there as he's painting this painting. And he never would have known that that would have ended up in the Louvre, because at that time, the only way you could get into the Louvre would be you had to be dead for 10 years. So he did get in there, which I'll tell you about later. But he did not get to see Liberty Leading the People live there. The painting itself had kind of a sad story. But this building here, that is very, very narrow, was built in 1706. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And it was built because it was this tiny little parcel of land that went into the back. It was basically the passageway to get in the back, and there was a church back there and a convent here to the right. And this parcel of land, there was a kind of a bitter divorce, and the wife got part of the land, and so she just decided she was going to build something right in there to the heck with the ex-husband, and she built this little property that kind of blocked it, so nobody could get back there. You could get to the chapel. The chapel entrance was actually on the Rue de Lille, on the back street. It was raining so hard this morning And then it was raining just a little bit ago. And so I'm very happy that when I left, the rain has stopped. There's still a chance, 30% chance here at 5 o'clock. So hopefully I've got my umbrella ready to go. There's tons of galleries here along this little space, some clothing stores, but you're straight across. So that is over there. Basically, that is the Grand Gallery that goes running across there. Oui, oui. Nico, oui, bonjour. Sorry, I'm live. um, Somebody always finds me. So this is that right there is the passageway too. So this is the Pont de Carousel here, and the Louvre, which I just was today, this morning with some clients. But we're gonna head over here. We're gonna go right by the École des Beaux-Arts. I love this store and all these cute little cookie doodads and some really expensive, very expensive sets of paint that you could buy. That is $212. Collection of the Musée du Louvre, the Vermeer Art Collection. Well, that is definitely worth. Look at how beautiful that is. It makes me want to think I could paint. So it is a kind of a lovely day. It's not too cold out either. I'm just hoping that this week we don't have a bunch of rain. Originally we were, but it always rains on my birthday. Well, not always. Most of the time, I shall say. So straight ahead there, we can't really see the dome from where we are, but straight ahead is the dome of the Institut de France, and that is where the academy is. And Delacroix petitioned into being a part of the institute, into the Academy of Paintings, and he wasn't accepted until his eighth time, and he was pretty ticked off about it because all these other artists were there. He kind of didn't get a lot of the accolades, which I think is true of just about every artist when they're in their lifetime and when they're alive. But he also he went to the École des Beaux-Arts, which I'll tell you about when we go around the corner. But he kind of always wanted just to have everything done and kind of done quickly. So sometimes he didn't always kind of would take some shortcuts, and including sometimes he would put a varnish on a painting before he should have, before it dried, and then the paint would crack and he'd have to redo the painting later. So some people thought that maybe he should have stayed studying under an artist a little bit longer. But that's the Institut de France straight ahead, that building that you see there. But here alongside of me is the École. Here is the École des Beaux-Arts. And before it was École des Beaux-Arts, it was the Monuments Museum that Alexander Lenotre set up. And here they have some exhibits. So I actually just realized that the exhibit I wanted to see closes in a week. So I need to get down here. Although I don't have a lot of time and they're not open Monday. They're not open 6 days a week. They do some really cool, very detailed exhibitions, mostly about drawings. And they had one back, I think it was in the fall, that was about foliage and plants in art, and then also jewelry, which was pretty great. So this is the Rue Bonaparte. And he might not be part of this today's specific in discussion, but I can't help but point out one of my other favorite artists, Manet. These cute little guys. So up here on the left, where you see that really fantastic door, is where Manet was born. And it really is one of the best doors. And I know I've shared this before because I love it so much. But I'll take you over Sunday. That's a little quieter, but still in the morning it's the best. So check this out. So Edward Manet. And look at these handles. The greatest. There's some other just like this I've seen around in the city, but these, I love these ones. And then you have the amazing Louis perfume. Over there, they did a combination that they did with, goodness, uh, they did a little joint collaboration with the Louvre, and they did some really cool scents that were inspired by paintings and sculptures. And so I have the one that's of Winged Victory, but I think that collaboration is coming to an end soon. So I don't know. I'm sure they will. Hopefully they'll have it in their store till it's gone. So we're coming up over here to the École de Beaux-Arts, which I brought you before inside. Okay, look at that sunshine, just in time for you guys. And it's like perfect temperature. So this is the École de Beaux-Arts. And when Delacroix, I'm going to get out of the sun a little bit so I could see. The Delacroix ended up, in 1816, thanks to his cousin, Henri Reisner, he ended up coming and studying under Pierre Narcisse Guérin, who was of the neoclassical school, and he taught him for a while directly in his atelier. And then he came here to the École des Beaux-Arts in 1817, and he was studying under Guérin here at the École des Beaux-Arts, which is everyone under the sun studied here. You have Puget there on the left, and on the right you have Nicolas Poussin. And that chapel back there, that was actually a chapel from elsewhere in France. It was taken apart and moved here because it was going to be destroyed. And you can still go in there sometimes. There is an exhibit there right now where you see on that orange sign. There's an exhibit until yesterday, 21st of April. And but so when they do have those, and they're always free, even if it's something you're not interested in, just go in there anyway. I use that. There's a couple. There's the Bourse Museum, which is all really, really super contemporary art, which isn't my deal. But I have gone in there just because I want to see the building. And next to it, look at this great door here. This great door is from the Academy de Medicine. So part of the medical school. But I don't think it's actually used as that anymore. I think it's just an office of the French government. And Rue Bonaparte, that's the only street in Paris is named for Mr. Napoleon. And we're going to head down here, down one of my favorite little streets. And I hope that my screen keeps going dark. So I hope this is working. Look at how cute this facade is. Little green. And it's just so perfect with the street sign. But this street is Rue Visconti, named for Louis Visconti, who was a architect and designer who did, among other things, the fantastic fountain in front of Saint-Sulpice. But I love this little street because tons of people live down here. Thank you, Angela. Monet lived down here for a very short period of time. Frederick Bazille, of course, the car never comes down here. Okay, thank you, Sharon. It's just like, your screen goes to sleep. Balzac had his printing press here. The number 19 is where my man lived. Delacroix lived here. He moved here in October of 1835 till 1844. And the building, I think, has also been since, because this is a little more contemporary, unless they just update the facade. But he lived on the fourth floor, and that's actually the third and fourth floor looks like it's probably combined because that window is pretty amazing up there. So he lived right here. And also on this street also was where Charles Motte, the publisher, had it, was up just down here at number 13. And he published Fausse Gutta stories, which Delacroix did all of the illustrations for that. And I think that plaque there is for Balzac. But it's just such a quiet little street. I say that and two cars come down. But it's such a sweet little street. There's a little school here. Another man in red pants. I do love just how many men wear red pants here. And then I pointed it out to some ladies the other day on a tour, and they sent me an email saying how many they've now we're counting how many men were wearing red pants. I love it. So this isn't about Delacroix, but I love this little tiny park. It is the smallest green space in Paris. Here, the Square Alissonnier Citier, and she was born on guess what date, guys? That's right, April 26th, 1925. She was the first female that was in charge of a university, and also she was a minister of universities. And it's this sweet little park because she lived here at the very end of the street, but it's never ever open. I have never seen it open to the public, and it's just so adorable. But I don't know, the residents maybe have access to it because there's a garbage can in there, and it's usually relatively picked up. But it's so cute. I've never seen it open. But how about that? She's also born on April 26th. There's a lot. There's Marie de Medici. There's I. M. Pei. There's Adrienne Monnier, who was a partner of Sylvia Beach that had the Ami de Livre store that inspired Sylvia's. There's John Lebon. There's, and then also on that date, Diane de Poitiers. She died on April 26th. There's other things like Chernobyl. Um, Whatever. There was another natural, big, or not natural, but another disaster that happened on that day. This was used to be, and I have pictures of it, and I still meant to post them, and I had it from like a year ago. But this was this really cool street art, and you see the Manet still, and they used different pieces of paintings that these different artists did of female faces, and they kind of put it all together as a collage. The Manet one is still up there, and then you have Caravaggio. I gotta find it and share it because I wanted to share it, and I had the name. I think it's this one, the Visage Italien, studiomirage.com. It's really was really really cool, and I wanted to share it and tell everybody what the paintings were. You see this one around a lot too. But isn't this just the sweetest street? This has a lot of primitive galleries. See, look at that. Usually there's where it's so quiet. There's a lot of primitive galleries, and there's a exhibit every year. I think actually twice a year that they do. That's about primitive galleries. I think it was. I think it's coming up. I think it's in the next couple weeks. So this is Rue de Seine, as you know. Ooh, it was really really windy earlier, so hopefully that's not going to be too bad. You have look at that there. Maybe we'll run into the really handsome guy, the older guy, the French guy. that's on that show that shall not be named about the girl in Paris. This is my neighborhood, and he is my neighbor. And I've literally run into him twice. And every time I run into him, it's right over here. So this street, Rue de Seine, is also filled with galleries. So this whole, because we're so close to the Beaux-Arts and the Palais, the church, or sorry, the restaurant. You ran into him earlier today, Angela. See? Were you over here? Um, but you have, look at, there's a Bowie that's changing. And this place recently changed out to, it used to be more primitive art, not far. Yeah, he's pretty handsome. I think that's really actually about the only reason I'd watch that show. I love this little street because do you see what's straight ahead? And we will go in there today because I will share with you his paintings. But you could just think, Delacroix was strolling around these streets. I'm going to walk right by Furstenberg, but we're going to turn around and come back, so don't panic because I'm sure you guys know that that is definitely a Delacroix location. But we're going to go down here to number 20 on Rue Jacob, which is actually a very famous address, but not for him, God forbid. But it is where he moved in October 1824. He moved in here with a gentleman named Tails Fielding. He was English, and Fielding, there was four brothers. They were all artists. And there's actually a really fantastic painting that Delacroix did of him. We'll get across the street here. He lived at this location just for a few months, not for very long. But at number 20, if you listen to the podcast, and I know Angela is the Gold Star podcast listener. We did one about Natalie Barney, and Natalie Barney was an American that came to Paris, and she held a salon. She did it for over 60 years, the salon, and only interrupted by the war. But she lived here too. And in the very back of it, it's a huge property. It goes all the way back. It doesn't just have a courtyard, but it goes all the way back. And then you go to the left, and then that was where the Temple of Love was. And that was this little kind of Masonic like temple that was there, that was part of her property that she rented. But Delacroix also lived here, but he lived there before she did. She moved in here in 1910, and he would have lived here in 1824. So almost 100 years difference there. Just right here on Rue Jacob. Rue Jacob turns into Rue de l'Université, which we went to a couple weeks ago as well. And it just kind of ends right up there on Rue de Seine. I just did the update on my phone, and maybe that's why it keeps shutting off on me. But as long as it's not doing that for you, it's all that matters. So now we're going to go down the Rue de Furstenberg. And so you see lots of these, this area, it gets into, one block and it's interior design. So it's all the interior designer over here. And here's the place where I finally got my Rive Gauche and Rive Droite. Oh, Bisous. Maybe I need some Bisous. And the street artists, the one that they do, those are new ones. But this is a really great store. If you want a place to come and get some really unique, fun gifts or things for yourself, this company, Inuit Edition. I have a couple of their scarves. I got one for my mom too, but they do all those great scarves in there. They also do these bags. They have one like that. It's kind of like that, but a little bigger. That's a laptop sleeve that I've had my eye on. But you've got some really cool, beautiful stores in here. Might have to poke my head down the street here and see if Jean Charles added back. Nope. So see that little black rectangle? He, I have seen two different times he's added angels there, and some jerk that lives in this area always erases them. He told me because I posted a picture and tagged him and said something about what jerk does this, and he responded. Jean Charles sent me a message. Oh darn it, the doors are shut. He sent me a message and said it's the same guy that lives in the neighborhood. So I'm gonna go stand watch. Told him to put him back, and I'll stand watch and give the guy a stern talking to. So I was hoping we could have gone in there, but looks like they were closes at 5:30. What time is it? Oh, exactly 5:30. Um, and so this is where he lived. So this is where he lived at the very end of his life. He moved here on December 28th, 1857. Somebody's coming in. And he moved here because he wanted to be closer to Saint-Sulpice, which is where we'll also go. Move out of their way. Look, she has one of those scarves. That scarf she's carrying is one of those ones I just was telling you about. But he moved here. Oh gosh, he moved here, and it was a studio. He had the up on the French first floor. He had a apartment, and it was very very small. And he was able to get that plus the whole back courtyard, which was immense. Before he built the atelier back there. He built it all from his exact specifications, how he wanted it, and a pretty good sized garden, which is very unlike. For that sort of money, he paid, I think it was 2,900 francs a year. And I don't know what the equivalent of francs to uh, euros today is, but I'm going to guess it is next to nothing compared to what you would pay for that now. But he is able to build it to his own specification. He had his good friend Jenny Le Guyon. She moved here with him. When he first met Jenny, she was kind of his caretaker, and she took care of him and cooked for him and cleaned and did everything, and they were very very close. And he first employed her on Rue Visconti, and so she was moved in and on Rue Visconti with him to take care of him in 1835, and she was there with him till the end of his life, which was in 1863. She was absolutely wonderful. If you go to this museum, there's a small portrait that he did of her. She was actually with him till his last breath. A very very sweet, wonderful woman. But he ended up moving in here after he died. They later on, it was just nobody. It wasn't really that big of a deal who he was, and so even though there were some artists like Fantin Latour and Baudelaire and Manet, all these other people kind of got together, and after his funeral on August 17th, 1863, and said, why didn't they make a bigger fuss about this? And that's when Fantin Latour decided to paint the Hommage to Delacroix painting that is in the Orsay, that I be sure to tell everybody I ever take into the Orsay to see it. And it's absolutely amazing. Fantin Latour never met him, but he decided he wanted to do something for him that's something that needs to be a bigger deal, because when Géricault died, which he died in 1824, and he was older than Delacroix, but he was kind of thought of as basically the leader of the Romantic movement. And when he died, Delacroix took that mantle over, and basically when Delacroix died, the Romantic period died with him. The Romantic period came in after the Revolution too, so when everybody needed a little something sweet and wonderful. But we're going to actually pop in over here to we'll walk by Saint-Germain-des-Prés, because this is where on April 17th is where his funeral was. So everybody was, all those big guys, see, another man in red pants, all those guys were in attendance. Manet and Baudelaire. Baudelaire loved Delacroix, always would write really wonderful things. Sometimes people wouldn't always write the nicest things about him because he was different. He was different than from what everybody else was doing. especially Angre, and thought of him as his biggest competition, and so did David, because David was kind of towards that end of neoclassical. I mean, Angre's like poster child for neoclassical, but David was still a little, and it's the same thing you have in all periods of art. Everybody thought the Impressionists were nuts, and the Impressionists thought the Cubists were nuts, and just goes on and on. Now it's just kind of a whole mishmash. Now it's just contemporary. I don't miss me. What do you have here? Picasso, Dora Maar, here in the garden. And then I was gonna go in that side door of the church, take you through the side door, but I didn't see it open. We could, so we could sneak in the side, but I don't want us to get stuck. We'll try it. I'm sure hopefully the other side is open. Ah, okay. We'll just walk around the side. Whew, that worked. As you could tell, they do a Spanish mass, and on Sunday evenings, there's this little, oh no, I think I am trapped in here. Doggone it. Ah, well, that's why I almost didn't do this. Some days, just nothing wants to work. Welcome to Paris. Okay, we're going to do this. We'll go back here quickly around the corner again. I'm trying not to disrupt people. Okay. Ow! That door is so heavy. All right, just a little quick detour for you. Why is that? So they have this little kind of fair setup, but it's pretty much all of the exact same booths they have at Christmas. So it has the same nougat guy, and the same handbag guy, and the same leather guy. So if you can't come at Christmas, just come in April. And it's just not as cold because the it's exactly like the Christmas, except for you can still probably get some van show someplace, maybe. All right, now we're going to circle back around and go up to Sensu Police. And then this is the block of the famous City Pharma. This is not the City Pharma. This store, that one there, they have a lot of the same things, but usually about 30% more expensive. So with your fighting the crowds there at City Pharma, you get the deal. Or just go first thing in the morning. You do run the risk of some of your stuff, your favorite things that are very popular, not being in stock because they restock things in the morning and during the day, and but or go late at night. Same thing too. Sometimes stuff is picked over, but I just went a couple weeks ago. I think it was on Good Friday after I was in Saskatoon, and I popped in here and got everything I needed about 10 minutes before the store closed, and it was easy peasy. I hope we're not going to get rain again. So make sure tomorrow, on tomorrow's podcast, it's going to be all about Delacroix. We're going to, right after I get this done, gotta race home and record that with Crystal. But it's going to have even more information because I'm going to talk about his whole life and growing up and his family. Some like to say that his father, Charles Delacroix, was not his father, and that his father was Talleyrand, who was at first under Napoleon, and he kind of turned against Napoleon. But it was, they say that because his father had a testicular tumor. But then I did a deep dive into that, which is enjoyable. But I learned a lot about that, much more than, not just Lance Armstrong. But he ended up actually having surgery and fixing it. So at the time that his wife would have gotten pregnant, he was actually already good to go. So, and Talleyrand had very light blonde hair and more fair complexion. And Delacroix had very dark black hair and more olive colored complexion. There's the fantastic A la Mère de Famille. And this is still Rue Bonaparte. You got the Hotel Bonaparte, which is a great hotel. I've had some clients stay there before and really liked it. It has been an incredibly busy few days. Friday, I had 3 tours. So I had tours starting at 9 a.m. until 10 p.m. Walked 13 miles and had another one yesterday morning and another one this morning, and then raced home to get ready for all of these, the video and the recording of the podcast today for tomorrow. So, and then I have tomorrow I am not doing any work because tomorrow is not my favorite day to remember, but it was a year ago today that I lost my grandma. So I am going to probably have to do some work at home on my computer, but I'm going to go spend the day doing some things for her. So here we are, Sans Peace. We've come here many times, but we're going to go in here specifically to share with you Delacroix. Hopefully, if it's mass, it's not too loud. And then we'll pop up and end up in the Luxembourg, which, of course, is where he is twice. Not just the one statue you may know, but a second one to him. It's was it 2 weeks after Easter now? This was it was a busy time here 2 weeks ago. What a gentleman. Let's see. So here we are. Okay, that's quiet. So I'll sit over here so you can see. So Delacroix was a huge believer in doing these huge mural paintings in public spaces because back at that time, the Louvre opened in 1793, but there wasn't a lot of museums or galleries. And so he believed that you should do these huge, large scale format paintings in public spaces because that's how you could be remembered. Needless to say, he didn't know what would actually happen and how he's in paintings in galleries and museums all over the world. So he was commissioned to do this one on October 2nd, 1849. And when he was commissioned, it was originally going to be the holy water font, the baptismal. And then they decided to change that to be the Chapel of Angels. So when he was commissioned, they just said it just has to be whatever subject you want, but it has to be angels. And so there's 3 different stories. And this first one over here is Jacob wrestling the angel. It's Isaac, the son of Isaac, Jacob, and he was returning to Palestine, and he was wrestling all night with this angel, and the angel, neither one of them was giving up, and so finally the angel grabbed him in the thigh, and he said, what can I do? What can I do to make you stop? And then he basically told him, what he needed to do and where he was going to go, and that he was going to change his name, and that he would have to go on, and he would go on to basically lead this whole section of Christianity. So on the side of it is really interesting because it's very Oriental themed, because Delacroix went to Morocco. He was one of the very few artists to actually go to Morocco and actually see for himself the landscape and the people and sketch them. He painted stories of Morocco more than 80 times, so he really incorporated that in on the left, on the right. And this was a project he did towards the end of his life. In front of it there, where you see kind of that shield and the hat, which the hat is very much more modern, much more contemporary. I always think it's very Van Goghish, but it doesn't really fit in with the timeline of the story of Jacob and the angel. But he did that part in 20 minutes. He did this whole lower kind of still life portion in 20 minutes. But the fabric and everything were things that he brought back from Morocco. And when he painted these in a style that was a fresco, but he put wax in with it. And so by adding the wax in, it locks in the colors and keeps the colors much brighter. And then this one over here, this one over here is Helioterra being expelled from the palace. And Helioterra is the gentleman down there underneath the foot of the horse. And so the king of Syria told him and a bunch of other people to go there because it was filled with riches and gold, and you could see jewelry and everything around it. So they were going to go in there to steal all of it. and this angel comes in on a horse, and then the two other angels without wings come flying down and beating Helioterra. But Helioterra ended up seeing the light, yes, you could say, and he converted, and he didn't steal anything. But it is actually a story. It's from the Book of Macabre, and it's a Jewish story written Greek. So it's not even from the Bible, because he was just told he could just do whatever he wants. It just had to have the theme of angels. But the colors on this, some people say that they think this is the one he liked the best because it's the one he signed. But also, he did it on a wall. I don't think he needed. He probably figured people knew which one was his. But it's pretty stunning, and that color, the pinks and everything, are really great. And these were just restored in 2016 when I came here my first trip. It was like top of my list was to come to see Saint-Sulpice and see these Delacroix. And I got here and the whole entire chapel was covered with scaffolding and closed off. But then when I came back in November 2016, luckily it was opened. And then up on the ceiling, let's see if I could do this. Up on the ceiling, you have Saint Michel. Saint Michel. Let me go on this side so you can see it. Try to push this up so I don't lose everything here. And that one was done on a canvas and then placed on the ceiling. So, but he did all these and he finished them in 1854. And he had told people that these were going to kill him. That doing this project was going to kill him. This is why he moved to Fürstenberg, because messy, because his health, he was not doing well. He ended up getting tuberculosis, but he had all these other issues. He was coughing up a lot. He was actually at times coughing up blood, and just really sick. And so he'd come here and he worked on this, and he would have other people that would come in, and fill in and do some of the pieces around it. But which a lot of artists did, when you get later to Charles Lebrun and some of these other ones that did these massive, massive pieces, they're doing all the fine details, and then somebody else is coming along to, do the trees and fill it the color of the horse and all that kind of stuff. There's a great little hotel back in there, the Hotel Racamier. And I should say that over there that you see through the fountain there in the Place Saint-Sulpice was done by Visconti, who we just were at his street. So this is another guy. Well, I've talked about many a times, but he lived on the street. But this funny little, so it's just basically this street from right where we're standing to where the do not enter sign is. This is the Rue Henri de Juvenal. He was a writer, a journalist. He was married to Colette, and she was married to him. They had a child, and then she had a long affair with his son. But then her son later had an affair with Martha Gellhorn. Martha Gellhorn was the third wife of Hemingway, the best one, my favorite of all of the wives. And he lived just right up here with Pauline. See, funny how that all works together. And then you have the poem here. This is the poem of Arthur Rimbaud. I've showed you all these things on the walks before, but, in case you didn't see it, if you're walking around here, and straight ahead is the fantastic Musée de Luxembourg. That one is actually as old as the Louvre, and it was known as the Museum for Living Artists. So because you had to be dead for 10 years to go into the Louvre, this is where Cezanne and Matisse and all those guys would see their art hung is here at the Luxembourg, including Delacroix. So here, number 6, Rue Ferrou, is where Hemingway and Pauline lived. That's not about him today. But the Luxembourg is also part of the Senate, the Palais de Luxembourg, built by another lady born on April 26th, Marie de Medici. But when Delacroix did Liberty Leading the People, and the state bought it and then they hid it away because they didn't want people to get any ideas. And still to this day, they use that image all the time when there's any sort of uprising. So it was of the 1830 revolution that ousted Charles X, was the end of the Bourbons, ushered in Louis Philippe, the Duc d'Orléans. And so he bought it, but then they thought this is a bad idea. People are going to get some ideas. And so they actually gave it back to Delacroix. He had to keep it for a bit and he sent it to a cousin's house. And he was quite distraught about it. He wasn't very happy about that. And eventually, it would come into, not supposed to be on the grass, lady. Eventually, it would come to the Louvre. But Delacroix really wanted to see himself hanging in the Louvre, but he couldn't because he had to be dead to be seen. And so, in 1850, he was commissioned to do the center of the Galerie d'Apollon because they were doing work on it, and they commissioned him to do it. And he did Apollo slaying the serpent, that's smack dab in the center of the ceiling of the Galerie d'Apollon in the Louvre, which is pretty much right over the crown jewels. Fantastic. They actually took that down because it was done on a canvas. Michelangelo, of course, painted the ceiling, but most of these other guys smartened up after him. And so they would do them on canvas and then place them up there, which made it a little easier. So here we have the Orangerie of the Luxembourg, the Jardin de Luxembourg. And up here, we have some artists. This was done in 1880. So you have a lot of artists at the same period of time. So Rude is up there. David is up there. Barry, who was a good buddy of Delacroix, and he was known for his sculptures, that the two of them would go to the Jardin des Plantes and study animals inside of the zoo, which is the oldest zoo in Europe. And Barry does amazing sculptures. See some of them in the Louvre in bronze. But that guy right there he is. See? There he is. So he's everywhere around here. And I'll come up on Wednesday. I always I spend my birthday with my birthday buddies. So I'll go to the Louvre and I'll come up here. But I can see Delacroix, Ayampe, and Marie de Medici, of course, at the Louvre. And then I could see Delacroix and Marie de Medici here. I could walk by Rue de l'Odéon, where Adrienne had her store across the street from where Sylvia Beach would open her second version of Shakespeare and Company. I could see that all. Last year, my birthday was on a Tuesday, and the Louvre was closed. So I couldn't do that. But over here, our last little piece, and I think I hear, so I think it's exactly 6 o'clock. So this right here, this amazing piece was done by Jules Dallot. He did quite a few different pieces, sculptures, and monuments around Paris, a few that are dedicated to Louis XIV. But this was created in 1880 and it was done, or after actually 1890, and it was inaugurated on October 5th, 1890, and it was the Friends of Delacroix Society raised all the money to have this created. And so you see him up there. There is a terracotta clay bust copy of that that's in the Delacroix Museum. And you have here, you have time that's lifting up glory, and glory is laying a palm frond just below the master. And then you have the genie of the arts is down below here, looking up at him and clapping. And it's really stunning. And what I also love is if you remembered in that little corner of the Jacob wrestling the angel, there was kind of that little pile. And this has, the quivers and the bow on this one, but it's very reminiscent of that painting you saw there. But time is always an old man. But there, Eugène Delacroix. And so then he died on August 13, 1863, 160 years ago this year. So he lived to be 65 years old, which is pretty great for back then. And he had a long life with lots and lots of work. He wanted to be a writer at first. And so luckily, because of that, I have a very large book that's his journal there was about a 10-year span there, kind of in the middle of his life, that he didn't write in it every day, but it's chock full of amazing, amazing information, all in French. I haven't seen a copy of it at any place in English. It's not something you'd probably really find in the U.S. Very often, but here he is. Pretty amazing. But he also, we actually walk over here real quickly, um, is the Senate, because we are here in the Luxembourg, and this is the Palais de Luxembourg, which was built by Marie, and it is now the Senate. It's been the Senate for a very long time. It's a little muddy here. And inside there is Delacroix too. So if you go in here, we'll stop on the front side of it, is where the library is, and it kind of runs the whole span of the middle part of the building. And he did that whole entire library, the ceiling and coming down on the walls, and it's pretty fantastic. That's one of those things you could go in here, Chrissy. Was definitely one that you want to see on Patreon weekend. It is a little different every year, so I've come in here two years, I think, and then you get to see the major part of it, but each time it's kind of wound through some other areas. That's really cool to get to see some more of it, because you can't come into these buildings because this is the Senate. It's not open to the public since the terrorist attacks 2015. It is very dark and it's probably going to start to rain. But here on the first French floor is the library where all of his paintings are. And it's pretty great. He's also in the Palais Bourbon that we did a few weeks ago. He also painted the Hotel de Ville. The Hotel de Ville burned down in 1871. For the Palais Bourbon, he's also in other churches. He's in the St. Paul Saint Louis. Yep, it's retarded, right? He was in St. Paul Saint Louis, where it's Christ in the olive grove. And then he is also in another church, the Saint Denis, just Saint Sacrement, which is over in the Marais. Sorry, I'm getting my umbrella. Over in the Marais as well. So you can see him in a few places around the city for free in the churches, 3 churches. And then you can, of course, see him in the Louvre. And if you're here, definitely let me know. I will see you, Angela and Renee, later today. But I'll also see you in the Louvre this week. And Chrissy in June. So there we go. It is just like that. It just started raining. How's that for timing? So thank you guys so much. I won't be able to do one next weekend. But I will. There looks like every weekend in the rest of May looks good. And so I will, but I'm not going to be able to do one this Sunday because I'm not going to be available. But I do. Hopefully, you guys are getting the special Patreon newsletter version I'm sending to you on Thursdays, and also making sure that I post a link as well on Patreon in the message there. And so obviously you found it if you're here with me today. So if you are watching this later, and this is later when I post it in a few days for everyone to see these live, you could get, make sure to sign up for my Patreon. You can see these live with me. And I'm also going to be sending some other things in the newsletters coming up just for Patreon. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Sharon. It was so good to have you here. And I am going to race home to go and record a podcast. So make sure you listen tomorrow because it's going to be all about my main man, Delacroix. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you soon.